Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm very excited to welcome you to the launch of the 2025 Index of Bureaucracy. I'm Carlos Diaz Rosillo. I'm the founding director of the Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom. And this is very special because this project is a project that has become one of our main research products, a product that looks very easy in that beautiful pamphlet that you have, but it takes a whole year to produce this research product that, as you're going to hear from the person who runs the product, Sadi, it's not easy. And so we're very grateful to all the partners. We have four of them here who are going to talk about what they've done, and we're going to unveil the results of this research, which is much more than a set of numbers and charts. There's a lot of charts, there's a lot of numbers, but it's much more than that. It is a rigorous study that hopefully provides a roadmap for rethinking public policies so that we can build more productive economies. Our emphasis here at the center is always on the applied, on the practical, grounded in serious, thoughtful scholarship, but always with a special attention to the applied. As you know, in today's world, state efficiency and regulatory quality are not optional. They're essential pillars of national competitiveness. And so this study that we're going to present today offers an empirical analysis of great value to policymakers and to those who are interested in making government more efficient in general. It not only measures with precision the bureaucratic burdens that businesses face when they try to open and operate formally, but it also quantifies their economic costs, their impact on productivity, and the way they discourage investment and formalization. For a long time, for every edition of this study up until now, we've looked at micro and small enterprises. And for the first time, we're looking at medium-sized businesses. Way too often, in my opinion, these firms are overlooked in statistics, yet they play a critical role in creating quality jobs, driving innovation, and attracting investment. By putting them at the center of the analysis, we will find important gaps in our understanding. We will fill important gaps in our understanding of the business fabric. And so going forward, our idea is to alternate so that 1 year we look at small and micro enterprises, and the next year we look at medium-sized enterprises. And I'm trying to persuade Sadi to do big businesses as well. So we do all sectors of the economy. We're not there yet, but I think the goal is to do so, as is to grow the number of countries. This began as a study of 6 countries, and then we went to half a dozen, and then 17 studies, over 20 studies, and the idea is to keep on growing it every year so that more and more countries are added. Now we're looking at 18 countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, plus a handful of countries in Western Europe. And again, the idea is to keep on growing so that we're looking not just at the Western Hemisphere, but also in Europe and eventually the entire world. So this is a study that keeps on growing. And from conversations I've had with policymakers in different countries, they found it incredibly useful in allowing them to think thoughtfully through how to avoid excessive bureaucratic burdens. Our goal is not to say that bureaucracies should not exist. There's a need for regulation. There's a need for regulatory processes that make the economy work efficiently. But our concern is with excessive regulations, those regulations that burden businesses. And so the idea is to provide an objective analysis so that businesses can be more effective and government policies can be more efficient. And what better way to discuss government policy than to talk to somebody who has led a country, and not just any country, but the 12th largest economy in the world. So we're very, very grateful to President Felipe Calderón for joining us today. He, as you know, was president of Mexico from 2006 until 2012. He's now a fellow with us at the center. During his tenure, he led efforts to promote economic growth, strengthen the rule of law, and increase investment in infrastructure, education, and competitiveness. President Calderón, in addition to having been the former president of Mexico, was the president of his party, Partido de Acción Nacional, and he was also a member of Congress, a deputy in the National Congress. He was the director general of the National Works and Public Services Bank, and Secretary of Energy of Mexico. So it is a luxury to have President Calderon with us. We're going to engage in a conversation in which we're going to talk about some of the accomplishments on bureaucratic, on the reduction of bureaucratic barriers and deregulation that he accomplished during his 6 years at the head of Mexico's government. So, Mr. President, thank you for joining us. All right. Following this, we're going to hear from another special guest, and then we're going to unveil formally the results of this year's study. Mr. President, I want to begin by asking you for just an overview of some of what you did when you were president of Mexico to make the regulatory process more efficient, more effective, and what you did in terms of deregulation.
Thank you. Good morning, Noel. It's a pleasure to me to stay with you today. I read yesterday, last night, the report, and it's quite exciting. It's quite good. What I can share about the effort the federal government did when I was in office is, first, we focused the attention of the government in the bureaucratic barriers and the procedures that were established then. And first, let me start by what I learned at that time. Regulatory framework and bureaucracy are like the trees, no? Every single year there is a new circle around the plant, around the tree, and that implies that the tree is growing, growing, and growing. Every single administration establishes its own new circle of bureaucracy and regulatory framework for good reasons, or well-intentioned reasons, or bad reasons, or vested interests, or somebody arrived with a concern that is a concern for one specific sector of the economy, but suddenly everybody believes that it's a general measure that it needs to be taken, and then the bureaucracy and regulatory framework increase. And there is a moment in which nobody knows exactly what were the reasons for a specific rule, a specific decree, a specific measure. Well, what we did, first we analyzed carefully with a special unit what were the steps that anyone, small company, or person individually, the steps that needs to take to open a business. At federal level, let me be precise. I know the analysis distinguishes between federal and local level, municipal level. Federal level, well, and it was clear that it was a complicated process. You know, you want to open a business at federal level, you need to go first to the Foreign Relations Ministry, Secretaría de Relaciones Exteriores. Do you know why? Actually, nobody knows why, but you need to go there. You need to go there. You need to ask a permit there to open a business, and even for the name, any business. But it's a question that I don't remember if it appears or appeared at that time in the Constitution. And of course, could be something related to the wars with the United States, with the French, etc. But the point is, you need to go to Foreign Relations Ministry, asking for a permit, and asking for a permit for a name. Then you need to go to economy, and then you need to go to other dependencies. You need to go to Hacienda to pay taxes, of course, but you need to go to the Social Security Institute to pay taxes as well. Currently, both systems, the computers of both institutions, even both were collecting taxes. They didn't talk each other. It was incompatible, the softwares of Social Security Institute and Hacienda. So we decided to create I wonder, you have the one slide I had. We created a platform in the internet, and the name was Tu Empresa. Can I have a click? No click. All right. Clicker. Well, we created a platform in the internet, a web page practically, and the name is tuempresa.gov.mx. And in that platform, the people could fulfill the requirements of different federal offices at the same time, in the same computer. And actually, to formalize all the procedures, you could get in the office of a notary in 2 hours maximum, you can fulfill all the requirements instead to go visit another office. So with that, we reduce the number of days to open a business at federal level from 58 days to 9 days. So there was a dramatic reduction in the process on average, and it was of the most important competitive measures that we took. Other, Carlos, was quite interesting is I used to call that, nobody cares the name I put those things, but anyway, the carry-on regulations. So if we go to government, the only luggage you are allowed to take is carry-on. What does it mean? So the secretary of any dependency, health, education, tourism, whatever, you can take with you the legislation, the regulation that you seriously are going to use. And in the carry-on are the most essential things you need to travel, right? So nothing else. So I established a special date. Maybe that was the last day of October, but 2009, I believe, or 10. And for that day, any member of the cabinet needed to present his carry-on or her carry-on. So what are the rules, the regulatory measures, the determinations of the office, the law that they need for daily basis. So what is the regulation you need exactly? Well, I need the special authorization for this. So I need the process to take that. Okay, write it down in a paper, and formally you will present the rules that you need to work every day. Las reglas que necesitas para jalar. Punto. If you are unable to remember one of those rules, or really you don't need, or you don't remember what this rule is for, don't write it down, and that rule will disappear. So after October 30, we disappear 14,000 procedures at federal level. Why? Because nobody remembered what kind of procedures were that, what was the purpose of them. No?
And you can do that executively, or do you need Congress to intervene?
Executively. Because all of them were executive orders, currently. Of course, there were other procedures established in law. For instance, this to go to Foreign Relations Ministry, established by law, even by constitution. Some of them were impossible to overcome. But most of them are regulatory things. Some bureaucrat in some moment in life established some obstacle to the citizens because it was necessary, or because he or she had a very important friend with a very important business established a regulatory framework, and nobody else remember what it's exactly for. So that's one. And finally, a very curious thing is we organize a contest, a public contest, like in TV, no? And the name of the contest was, what is the useless procedure at federal level? El concurso del trámite más inútil. So there were like 4,000 participants. And the winner was a young lady, was a patient of Social Security Institute in health sector. She needed medicine, gamma globulin, that to be administered to her required the signature of the director of the hospital, the director of the institute of the IMSS, and the signature of the undersecretary of Hacienda of the Treasury, because it was so expensive. So she needed to go from one desk to one building to other desks to other building to other. And if the medicine needs to be administered every single month, she used to get the medicine every 3 months. So it was completely stupid. So with that, we collect a lot of information. We understood that there are a lot of things that could be fixed in a different way, and that was very useful to reduce the regulatory framework at federal level. That's basically the thing we did.
Let me ask you, we mentioned at the beginning the different levels of regulations, and Mexico, like the US, is a highly federal country, where in the case of regulations, whether it's to open a business or to maintain the business, you have to deal with federal regulations, state regulations, and local regulations. Anything you did with the governors, with the mayors, with the non-federal actors, also to help encourage, reduce non-federal regulations, so that it's not just the federal government going from 58 down to 9 days in terms of regulation, but also so that you can partner with the states and with the municipalities.
Yeah, actually, the program implies the collaboration between different orders of government. However, there is the case that at local level, there is a lot of vested interest or a lot of political pressure. One of the most important is the uso de suelo, of the authorization for business in a specific locale or a specific place. And it could be for the good reasons, maybe because the neighborhood doesn't want to have more business, no, and to establish only for housing that place or whatever. Or it could be for bad purposes because the members of the municipality are managing by quotas and extorting and briberies this kind of permits. So it is quite difficult to advance with such kind of interest. Paradoxically, for instance, today, Mexico City, if you want to get a permit to open a business at your home, no, and actually at your home, at the front, it used to be a pharmacy like 20 years ago, which allows you to open a business with no problem. You have a lot of restriction to do that. However, if you count the number of businesses operating in the street, completely illegal, completely irregular, completely informal, and all of them paying some bribe to some authority in some level of government, it illustrates how this business is working. No, you want to go by the book, fulfilling the requirements. You cannot advance. Maybe you need some kind of payment. But if you can go put your business just in the middle of the walk side or whatever, you can stay there to sell tacos and everything or clothes or whatever, with a big disorder. The informal economy, the labor market, which is informal in Mexico, is skyrocketing. Now could be a level of 57% of the labor force. So that's now what we did in that, Carlos. Not for that specifically, but another measures. We understood, for instance, that for a small business, it's quite difficult to pay the overcost that implies to have a lawyer, to have marketing, to have an accountant, what we can call the back office, no, of any business. A big bank, of course, could have a legal department, marketing department, accountant department. But for a small business, this lady or this young boy cannot afford to pay accountant, lawyer, and marketing. So we organize some kind of support that under the umbrella of this program, that in coordination with the Trade and Commerce Association, or Cámaras de Comercio, we use their offices supporting the back office that all those small enterprises need. So in the sense that you need a lawyer to open, we put the lawyer, you have the right to have some hours of that lawyer to open the permits, or the accountant to pay the taxes. We were the most interested to do that part, of course, and it was free for the small people, small businesses, and it worked very well. So, and finally, the tradition, what I received from President Faulkner was a small budget to support small companies. The idea was very basic. If there is 100 pesos and there is 1,000 companies, just split that money, 1 peso for one company, there are 900 without support. Or just split 10 cents for everyone, and that's it. 10 cents is completely useless for anyone. So we decided is to take that money, to organize that fund, increase, of course, with more budget, and use that as a collateral for the banks. So we started to talk and said there is a lady who wants to open a shoe shop, so zapateria. So we talk with the bank and say, give her a credit, and we will cover her payments like at the second, the third, the fourth payment if she cannot afford. And the guarantee we established with those funds allowed to open in a lot of businesses, much more than the businesses that were supported before that measure, that when it was just split among the beneficiaries.
You mentioned a really important topic, which is the informal economy. I said at the beginning that Mexico is the 12th largest economy. If you take into account the informal economy, I'm sure it'll be the 7th or 8th largest economy in the world. And part of what regulations do is put order into the economy. Again, as I said before, we're talking about over-regulation. Did you do anything to encourage the informal economy to transition into the formal economy? Any rules and regulations that, without being too burdensome, encourage those taco stands in the middle of the street to actually become formalized and regulated in a formal way?
We established a set of measures in the sense that the brackets in the tax system were completely affordable for the lowest level. So if you have a business in the street, it was clear if you have it was impossible to say I cannot afford the taxes because it's quite cheap to do that. But the point is that money was going to be to the local authority, to the mayor or whatever. There was a clear incentives to take care of the street and security, whatever. However, local authorities they just didn't want to formalize that sector. Probably they prefer the old method to do things, which is taking briberies instead to formalize the system. In other words, it was even cheaper for the taxpayer to jump into the formalization and pay the taxes, cheaper taxes to the authority, but anyway, they prefer to receive from that street seller money, no, so the corruption thing is a great obstacle. And the other, the big obstacle in Mexico is the cost of Social Security Institute. So Social Security is the burden that nobody can afford. So you are going to pay like a 24% of the labor cost to formalize your workers, and after that you need to pay more in terms of time. A lot of people just avoid that measure. Now it has been very important and positive, and it has resulted in increase in disposable income, and that's good. Constant increases in minimum salary. I remember all the ideas in the macroeconomics text about the disturbance that minimum salary or price in top or something, or maximum prices or whatever, the distortion they made to the market, so-called. But the point is, it's nice to see how minimum salary has increased dramatically in the last years, but it's correlated the number of the informality market is growing at the same pace, no? Because yes, most of the economy doesn't pay minimum salary, right? But in the lowest level, when the minimum salary is paid, there is very small family business, a torteria selling, no? Or taqueria, no? In that level, changes in the margin to the minimum salary implies to jump from formality to informality. And there are a lot of factors to analyze, but definitely a very big consultancy, McKinsey, I believe, wrote like 15 years ago a very interesting essay called "The Tale of Two Mexicos." No, and it checks that there are two Mexicos indeed. One is the Mexico which is formal, industrial, export-oriented. It's the most powerful manufacturing sector probably in the world. No,
Mostly in the north.
In the north, in the center, it's well distributed, not in the north, but in the center, in the Bajío, the west part of the country. It's a machine. It's a machine. Yes, in the south and southeast is not present. But that provokes that this sector is formal, export-oriented, linked to the American economy, and the other sector is informal. The formal sector is improving competitiveness. The informal sector is deteriorating competitiveness, are less competitive every single day. The formal sector is growing. The informal sector is decreasing as economy. The development of Mexico is in the formal sector. The underdevelopment is in the other one. Quite impressive. Unfortunately, not too much people pay attention, not too much parties or government pay attention at this crucial aspect of the more formal the economy is, the more chances you have to increase productivity, to finance the people, to train the people, and so on.
Just two more questions, then I'm going to open it up for you so you can ask any questions you want. It really takes political will to be able to do these things. When I was in the White House, the president said that for every new regulation, we had to get rid of 2 regulations. For every new, no matter the scope, for every 2 regulations, for every new regulation, 2 had to go out. And by the end of the second year in office, over 16 regulations had been taken out for every 1 regulation. So it really does take political will. And without it, it's very difficult. Let me ask you a question about using new technologies to make the regulatory process more effective, and in the process, decrease corruption. One of the easiest ways to ask for a bribe is through these procedures. A lot of them local, where you go and you want a permit, and then the mayor or the local official asks for a cut. Yes, I'll give you the permit if you give me X, Y, and Z. And one effective way to get rid of that is through digital processes, so that asking for the permit or fulfilling the regulation or opening up your business is done online, so that you can't bribe the computer, right? And so you go online, you fill out all the paperwork, and then you get your permit. Did you do anything in terms of digitizing and going online, at least at the federal level, so that you can streamline bureaucratic processes?
It has done, but actually I realized how important is that, because somebody in public actually explained me the importance of electronic bill, the factura electrónica. And I remember when that was implemented, I started to hear a lot of complaints from the people, but actually I realized recently that that measure implies to clean it up a lot of attempts for corruption on that. The second is regulatory changes to assume in a procedure la afirmativa ficta. How do you say that? The positive answer, assumption, the positive answer. If you ask for some procedure, for instance, a permit to open your business, you have 30 days to receive a response from the government, yes or no. But if in 30 days you don't receive anything, you have the right, you have the yes. It's a assumption that you are right if you don't receive any response. And with that, a lot of people start to work with the afirmativa ficta. So if they want to do something wrong, they need to answer you, and with a negative answer, you can go with a judge and say these guys they have not fundaments for this negative.
One more question, and then I'll turn it over to you. One of the hopes that I have with this study is that it could serve as a useful tool for policymakers to actually improve public policy and realize what bureaucratic burdens need to be reduced. And so, if you can be totally honest, when you were in office, being president, of course, is more than a 24/7 job. You're busy with crises and all things, and you don't have time to read reports. But did you find academic studies, and even though this is very practical, it is an academic study after all, did you find that academic studies, whether from Mexican institutions or foreign institutions, ever help you become a policymaker, ever help you realize that something had to be done on X, Y, or Z?
In most of those, I was interested very much. Actually, this essay about the tale of two Mexicos, I read completely being president.
As president?
Yeah, but also what ChatGPT does today. I asked some student or some, please give me a brief of this report and let me see what exactly does it say. It was very useful to me. Of course, in the matter that I was interested the most, for instance, organized crime. I was so careful. I used to quote, and I will do that in my class in the 7th and 8th classes. But I wonder, did you have the chance to know Tom Schelling? Well, he was much brave. I didn't know him, unfortunately. Tom Schelling was a professor at Kennedy School. Actually, was Nobel Prize later on, no?
Economics.
And he wrote an essay called "The Real Business of Organized Crime." No, I spoiled. They say the real business of organized crime is extortion. It's not drugs. It's extortion. Well, I'm coming back. And the other essay that I read, very interesting, is from Robert Barro, from again an economist from Harvard University. And Barro, it's quite interesting. He made a research taking the data of all the economies available after the Second World War. And he used a dummy variable saying, this state has rule of law, this state has not rule of law, and with different levels, of course, of analysis. And the conclusion of Barro is that after the Second World War until 80s, or beginning in the 90s, the economy has one variable that explains the most of economic growth. That variable is not oil, is not religion, is not history, is not geographical position. That variable is rule of law. And the countries with rule of law, the difference between countries with rule of law and countries without rule of law is 35% of GDP per decade, 30 on average. So, and I was quite interested in that, and that motivated me to emphasize the idea to establish rule of law as a mandate, and quite difficult because you need to change a lot of perception and culture in the society that has been inoculated exactly by violations of rule of law. People learn that the right thing is to avoid the law. You need to go the other way around. It's difficult, but it's the only way.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you can tell, he's not only a great public servant, but also a scholar, somebody who reads a lot, and somebody who has fun too. We've known each other for 25 years, and we're members of the Latin Rumba Caucus, a group that just had fun in addition to study. So thank you. Questions for the president? Don't be shy. Since we are a little short of microphones, just yell it out so that the microphone can
Talk too much, maybe.
stand up and let us know who you are, your name, and where you're from.
Noticed that you had mentioned that there is an issue of corruption that has to be acknowledged. One of the solutions that you had mentioned is turning to using technology so that you don't have to go through a middleman and get a potential bribe. I wanted to ask, what are some other ways that you can go about reducing this corruption when a country has limited resources for using technology, and they cannot spread it throughout the entire country at a rapid pace.
They cannot what? Spread?
And they cannot spread this technology throughout the country at a rapid pace.
Right. Well, I'm not an expert in technology. I would love to do so. Maybe in my next life, I will try to get closer to that. But some things that I believe are quite useful is, for instance, traffic. There are a lot of corruptions in traffic, bribery, no? Mordidas, we say in Mexico with the traffic agents. Basically, cameras. Cameras, just objective, you can get the camera officially, or you can get the camera in your car. Technology can cancel this hurting corruption in the streets and the highways. Cameras from the government, cameras if you pass a light, if you go over the limited speed, a camera can fix any doubt. If you have a camera in your car, you can invoice, you can get the video to say, this guy is trying to get a bribe from me. This is extorting me, mordiéndome. I think it's one example very clear. In terms of people corrupted, I receive a lot of criticism, but I believe in vetting process, and I believe, for instance, in polygraph. And polygraph is increasing its efficiency. It's not accurate, it's not 100%, but I used to prefer 80% of agents that approve polygraph. I prefer 80% of reliable agents. If the polygraph could fail in 20%, I vote it, definitely. It's much better to have nothing. That's another. And now this you were mentioning, you make a procedure that is completely, I don't know if blockchain could be used in order to follow or to track all the procedures in government, but you can avoid holes and other ways in which bureaucracy try to arrange discretionary spaces for bribes. No? Another that are not related with corruption, but one of the examples I used to use is the acronism. The acronism is a way in which the government uses acronism because somebody in office is the only guy who knows what the acronism means. No? And you need his position to explain to everyone. No? So I forbidden the acronism. It's not related with corruption, but it's a joke. So.
Do one more question. Okay, we got two. 1 and 2.
Juan Pablo Gaga from Venezuela. Being, you know very well the situation of Venezuela, being a situation in which we are, you haven't mentioned that rule of law is one of the important variables in order to establish a competitive economy. What would you believe those variables would be for a country in the situation of Venezuela in the case that we have to start a new country? As you all know, all our institutions have deteriorated completely, and there is a willingness in the population to accept changes now. So you have the opportunity to create a new bureaucracy which can create new policy in order to start a new country. What would you say would be those variables apart from the rule of law, which I believe it's also one of the important ones that will be needed to begin this process?
If I were walking in the sand in the beach, and suddenly I found a lamp, and I get to provide some frictions in the lamp, and suddenly a genius comes up and tell me that I can ask for 3 desires for my country or for Venezuela. So the first should be rule of law. If the question is like that. The second, definitely, will be health services. Health is first. And the third is education. Quality in education. If the genius say only one desire, I will do rule of law. No country can survive without rule of law. No country can prosper without rule of law. Singapore, when Singapore was declared independent, it was not a victory, it was a defeat. So the Malaysians say, go out, Chinese from Malaysia. No? So the independence was declared like a punishment to this dirty poor with prostitution, drugs, etc. So forget about oil. They had not agricultural land. They have no drinking water. They have nothing. But they created a nation that was able to establish clear, simple rules and fulfill the rules. And with that, Singapore had like a 1/4 of the income per capita of Mexico. Now it has like 8 times the income per capita of Mexico. And it's very painful to say, but it's true. The rule of law, I believe, is the problem with our countries is our people don't practice rule of law because the authorities don't practice rule of law. And even some people say it's a culture, it's our culture. We are in that way. We should not. We learn to do in that way because we have government that don't go in that way. But you need to revert that part. It's going to be a very painful process, but it's not a question of laughing culture. It's a question of if you learn since a child that you need to respect the red line, you will respect red light. But if your father goes, jump the red light, go make the U-turn, which is forbidden, your child is going to learn that that's the right way to do. And it's a mess. So there is a moment in which the government needs to take the lead to enforce the law. It will be painful, but there will be a moment in which the country can change. I believe that.
Thank you, Mr. President. One more question.
Good morning. I'm Douglas Umbrella. We appreciate very much your very candid comments on the Mexican situation. And I do appreciate your comment on Singapore. It's the word no thought to be a fine country because they apply fines for everyone who goes against the laws and the rule of law. And they can be very tough on people in that case. But you being president of Mexico, and I would like to hear your candid assessment as to how the rule of law and institutional strength has withstood the passage of time, given all the changes, some positive, other not so positive.
How do what? What was the question, student?
The question is, what's your assessment on Mexico's institutional strength and rule of law, given the passage of time since you left office?
But definitely, it's becoming worse and worse and worse and worse. No? I always had that absolutely clear. What is the mandate you receive as president? What is the order you receive from the voters? It's maybe to give backpacks to the students before scholars, maybe to give iron to ladies in the Mother's Day. I don't know. What Constitution say is obey and fulfill the law and enforce the law. The oath of office is that protesto, guardar y hacer guardar la Constitución. Period. It's not about backpacks. It's not about gifts. It's not about cars. It's not about promoting a baseball stadium. It's to enforce the law and keep the law. And I tried to do so, and it was very painful, very criticized, but I know this is the only way to change, the only way to development. Government after me, and I think we were in the right track, and we started to get success in several orders. Even in crime started to decrease. I left a trend of 23% of decrease, and 2 years later, the next government got a lot of benefits from that trend. However, they abandoned the effort. And the last government, with López Obrador, they just make a U-turn in the effort. Not to enforce the law, is coming back all the way, not only to tolerate, but even to get in full accomplish with crime. So what is the situation in Mexico today regarding rule of law and regarding crime and regarding certainty? It's completely worse.
Thank you. And just before we conclude, let me ask you just a question that has nothing to do with the topic at hand, nothing to do with the bureaucracy. But I'm just curious. You were president for 6 years, and now you've been former president for a little over 12 years, 13 years. What do you miss the most about being president?
Yeah, good. But definitely the people. I organized my calendar in order to travel out of Mexico City Tuesday and Thursday, all the time. Is to inaugurate a highway, is to establish a program, it was to attending school, was to make a lecture in a university. But the people was so kind, and I took a lot of time saying hello, hand by hand, maybe half an hour getting into, half an hour getting out, and we consider like a 3, 4 events. Was quite impressive experience. Very nice. And the same, very poor people, indigenous people, all soldiers and marines that I visited them a lot. I miss that part definitely.
Thank you. Now you have a new crowd and a class full of students who are going to be looking up to you. All right. Thank you again for being so generous with your time. And now we're going to unveil the official results of the Index of Bureaucracy 2025. And to do so, I'm going to call the person who's been running this program for the past 5 years, Sadi Levy. Sadi, thank you so much for leading this effort. Thank you.
Well, really good morning, everyone, and you are so welcome. I'm so happy for joining us to the presentation of the result of the Index of Bureaucracy in this 2025, its 5th edition. And thank you very much, Carlos. You have been really a great support for our project. And not only that, you encourage us every day to go on growing and growing. And of course, I have to thank President Felipe Calderón, because actually I would like to name you champion of our project, because really, you really express what we want to say, the problems and how to fix them. So thank you very much for this comment you gave us this morning. Well, so let's begin talking about bureaucracy, a topic that actually has long sparked debate in academic and public policy circles, because it has really deep historical roots. In fact, the name red tape comes from the colonial era, when the administrative files documenting Spain's dealing with its colonies were bound with a red leather cord, the infamous red tape. So here we are. But okay, we agree, it's not a new challenge, but it remains unsolved, and it's increasingly relevant. In recent years, it came back to the spotlight, from President Milei's Censo plan to President Trump's Department of Government Efficiency, making it once again a topic of debate. And as we have been listening, bureaucracy is not a bad term in itself. Actually, originally, it was designed to standardize public administration. However, when left unchecked, it becomes excessive and a breeding ground for inefficiency and corruption. So what was once thought to facilitate growth, to promote growth, now stands in its way. So this is the reason that we had in mind, that's the problem we had in mind when we created the Index of Bureaucracy, to provide a clear data-driven foundation for public policy reform, a roadmap for building a more dynamic and efficient economy. And the index focuses on the most relevant and scarce resource entrepreneurs have, time. And specifically, the time that small and medium entrepreneurs must invest just to open and running their business. And exactly those are the two indices we offer you today: the Index of Bureaucracy for opening a business and for running a business. To ensure comparability among countries, because we have different regulations, different culture, different way of doing things, we gather those procedures in some categories. 5 for opening a business and 3 for running it. For opening a business, they are identification and registry, registering in national entity, registering in municipal entities and their permits, basic service requests, and those specific to the productive activity you are working into. And for running a business, 3 categories: administration of employment, administration of operation, and a category we call other, and we'll explain it later. Actually, they later are divided into another 11 subgroups of categories. This year, as Carlos said before, we focus on medium-sized enterprise. I would say a strategic choice because it combines the flexibility of a small company, but also the structure and the reach of large corporations. Though they represent less than, I would say, 2% of global firms, they account for 25% of private employment, 30% of GDP, and more than 20% of value added. So they are key players in driving innovation, exports, and attracting investment. Our data was collected through a network of ally centers in 21 countries this year, in Latin America, the Caribbean Commonwealth, and Europe. And we reviewed also the productive structure of each country, their legal and regulatory framework, and then we interviewed business people to validate our findings. Let me share with you a testimony. I decided to open my business. I was ready to innovate, to hire workers, to serve my customers and contribute to the economy. But instead, days turned into weeks, then months, spent not on building my business, but on filling out forms, waiting for approvals, chasing signatures. I was really afraid that by the time I'd obtained the necessary permits, my opportunity would be gone. A competitor may have seized the market, or my partners may have moved on. This is the kind of story we repeatedly listen each time we make those interviews, no matter the country, no matter the productive activity we're dealing with. And what we're looking at is that bureaucracy has become a silent adversary, standing always in the way of production. So now let's look into the numbers behind that story. Opening a medium-sized company takes 1850 hours, 1,850 hours. You can say it really fast, but those are 231 working days, roughly 8 months full-time effort. Definitely, you are almost giving birth to your baby business. So, and variations are wide. They range from almost 1 month and a half to more than 2 years. And if we go deeper and go into economic sectors, we see that the secondary sector shows the highest burden, 19-20 hours, followed by the tertiary sector and then the primary. And in almost half of the countries, activity-specific procedures are the most time-consuming, accounting for more than 60% of the time, followed by municipal permits, with account more or less for around 25% of that time. So we speak a lot about promoting entrepreneurship, but how can we do it if we cannot have a company open? So this is the problem we are dealing with. But simultaneously, I have to say it's a blessing that a defining trait of an entrepreneur is perseverance, resilience, and stubbornness, if I may say, because they don't give up. They overcome every obstacle in their way. So finally, the business is up, it's running. But the challenge is not over, because bureaucracy doesn't stop once you start. So let's go again, but now looking into the numbers, the figures behind the running a business situation. It takes on average 1577 hours per year just to stay compliant, to stay legal and formally working. That is 76% of full-time workers' schedule. And again, these disparities are wide. From Panama, 246 hours per year, to Chile, 5,800, or Colombia, 5,200 hours per year, needing to hire 3 full-time workers just to manage paperwork. So if you begin with 4 people, 1 ran the business, the other 3 ran with bureaucracy. So again, going deeper into sector, what we found? We found that the highest business is also shown by the secondary sector, followed by the tertiary and the primary, but I may say with no substantial differences among them. The most time-consuming procedures are those gathered in what we call others category. And that is, that's include activity-specific requirement, certifications, and license renovations. Then it's followed by the second category, which we call administration of operations, notably driven by taxes and health and safety in workspace. Obviously, I don't have to say, it's not an easy task to stay compliant. So being so difficult to stay compliant with the bureaucracy, it's not a surprise that many companies remain in the informal sector. And if you are in the formal sector, it's not a mystery that sometimes you need to feed those underground channels to make easier to get the permits you need to work. And then what we did was, based on the analysis of opening and running a time, the countries that show the lowest bureaucracy burden include Brazil, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Mexico, Paraguay, Portugal, El Salvador, and Uruguay. But even for them, there is a lot of room of improvement. In some cases, the problem is in the regional situation, when the country have different levels, the federal and the local and so on. There are many difficulties that arise from that situation. So until now, I've been talking to you in terms of time. But time is money, no? So what does all that time cost for an economy? If we use the labor productivity coefficient calculated by the International Labor Organization, that for our sample is $33.3 per worker per hour, and we multiply that coefficient by the numbers of hours needed to open a company and scale it by the number of new companies we create each year in our countries, which is around 262,000, we reach the amount of $16 billion per year. Let's do the same calculation, but now for running a business. We use the productivity coefficient, we multiply by the numbers of hours we need to run our business, and scale it by the number of active companies, which are in average 1.8 million. So in that case, we are talking about almost $95 billion. And if we add those two, we get to the figure of $110 billion. Definitely is not a trivial figure. And I would say it's a red alert. So we must act, and we must act now. So what we have to do? As we were listened previously, the first thing that we have to do is to simplify, to eliminate unnecessary and intrusive procedure. Then we go and use the technology to digitize, investing in accessible, citizen-friendly e-government platform and keep them updated because that's very important. Third, we have to ensure transparency because transparency is the flip side of efficiency in a society. Both are simultaneously needed. We have to have clear deadlines, accountable institution, and visible responsibilities. Of course, we have to educate and empower our citizens, our businessmen, our public servants, because only with better governments and better citizens, we will reach a better quality of life. So just finishing, let me insist, efficient and transparent bureaucracy is not a luxury. It's a must. It's a prerequisite for growth. The Index of Bureaucracy quantifies that silent cost that businesses pay every day, not in money alone, but in lost time, lost innovation, lost productivity, and less jobs. The index is a practical tool for designing smarter policies, reducing institutional drag, and fostering a freer and more productive and prosperous economy. So we know where the problem lies. Let's be part of the solution. Let's try to remove obstacles and unleash talent. Thank you very much. Before introducing, oh, I forgot to say, I'm sorry. I forgot to say that after finishing this presentation, you will be able to download from our website the complete report in Spanish and in English. It's available freely, and any of you that wants the database for further research or for policy transformation, please just call us and we will share it happily. Very happy we'll be for doing that. Now, before the Q&A session, I would like first you to introduce 4 of our centers that are part of our allies and that they came here today to give us some details, because I have just spoken about averages of the whole countries, of many countries, 21 of them. But here we have 4 cases that I would like to know that you will listen a little bit more about them. And here we have from Brazil, Wagner Lenhardt, from Costa Rica, Luis Loria, from Guatemala, Sigfrido Lee, and from Trinidad and Tobago, Iana Yon. I will pass the floor now to Wagner Lenhardt. He will give us a few details on Brazil.
Good morning. Thank you, Sari, for first of all for the invitation and the opportunity to be here today. I want to say thank you also for the partnership and the opportunity to work in this project. For us, it's a great pleasure to be part of this index to help bringing the data and the information about the Brazilian reality. So thank you very much for you, Carlos, and all the Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom. I'll talk a little bit about Brazil. You know, Brazil is a continental country. We have more than 200 million people, a federal state. So we have the federal government, state government, and local governments. A very complex country with a lot of differences between the regions. If you go to the south, like my home state, Rio Grande do Sul, is completely different from the north of the country. So it's pretty interesting to do this kind of research because you need to work with this complexity and this regional differences. But talking about Brazil as a whole, I will talk a little bit, of course, about the opening procedures and the running procedures, and highlight 2 points in each of them. In the opening procedures, we are in a good position comparing with the other countries of the index. In fact, we are the country with the fewest hours to open a business in this index, and this is because we have a good journey, especially in the last 6 or 7 years, in digitalizing procedures, especially in the federal level. The federal level is doing a really good job in making all the procedures digital and simple for the entrepreneurs. This is happening also in the state and local level, but here we have some challenges. Some states and some local governments are in a better position, they advance faster, but we have others that need to do a better job, or to invest more time and money in this modernization. But as a whole, we are doing good. We have some even awards in the international landscape because of this digitalization of the Brazilian government. So I think this is one of the reasons why we are in this good position when we talk about opening business. Another thing that I would like to highlight is that in 2019, we have the opportunity to pass a law, the Economic Freedom Law, that is helping especially the local governments and the state governments to advance and to have a progress in the simplification and making the procedures faster for the entrepreneurs. This law is a big landmark for our country. Already has a big impact in the especially considering the procedures to open a business, and so we can see the results with the times that are demanding to open a business in Brazil. Talking about running procedures, in this case, we are not so good. We are in the intermediate position in the index, and especially for 2 reasons. One of them is about our labor market or our labor regulation. We have a very rigid regulation in Brazil about when you talk about labor. We have a recent reform 5 years ago, in fact 6 years ago. It helped us a lot. We have a better situation now, but still far from the situation we want to be, and we have certain that we need to do a new reform and a new movement to make the labor market more flexible, and to solve some of the problems that we still have in this sense. So we have a reform 6 years ago. We advanced, but we still have a lot of field to advance to be in a better position. The other reason is our tax system. In fact, we have a very complex tax system. Used to say that it's a mad system because it's really make people mad how to do all the regulations and procedures and demands that the government ask the entrepreneurs and the businessmen to do. So yeah, it's a big problem. We are in the middle of a tax reform. right now is debating, our Congress is debating this reform. The first step is already set, but we are now in the phase of regulation. A lot of people believe that this reform will simplify and put us in a better position. I'm not so optimistic about that. I think the main goal of the current government in Brazil is not simplify or make things easy to the businessman, is especially to have a bigger revenue for the government. So uh, I'm not sure we will have this simplification that is the promise, and probably that's my call. We will need another reform in the next years. So this is a very sensitive topic, something that we are talking about as a country for a long time. We had this opportunity right now to make things better, but I'm not sure we will make the most of this opportunity. These two things, I believe, is the main reasons why we are in this intermediate position in the index, and it's the most important highlights to bring to you right now in this moment. Once again, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here, to be part of this index. Is a great project, a great research. We need to understand better and better how to make things easier for business. Business is the wheel of progress. We all know that, and we need to make the entrepreneurial journey something easier, faster, and to promote these initiatives, to innovate, and to be more open to business and to the economic development. So thank you very much, Sari, and I will be available for the questions after.
Thank you, Wagner, from Instituto Milenio de Brasil, Sao Paulo. Now, I invite Luis Loria from Ideas Lab, Costa Rica.
Okay. Well, thank you, Sari. I would like to thank the founding director of the Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom, Dr. Carlos Diaz-Rosillo, for the support of this important research project led by Dr. Sari Levy-Carciente. Well, my name is Luis Loria, and I'm the founding president of Ideas Labs, a social, political, and regulatory innovation lab based in San Jose, Costa Rica. During the past 25 years, after my graduate studies at Harvard and MIT, my research and consulting efforts have focused on the design and implementation of public policies to advance economic freedom and unleash the creative and productive potential of Costa Rica. One of my favorite quotes directly from Adam Smith seems particularly appropriate for this occasion. It says, "The natural effort of every individual to better his own condition is so powerful that it is alone and without any assistance, not only capable of carrying on the society to wealth and prosperity, but of surmounting 100 impertinent obstructions with which the folly of human laws too often encumbers its operations." So it's amazing that quote from Adam Smith could serve as introduction to the bureaucracy index. I would like to mention some of the challenges that are still in place in Costa Rica to reduce the regulatory and bureaucratic burden. It has to do, one of them has to do with the real impact of regulatory reforms. Like there was a news that came out last week from the government, the Costa Rican government, which explained that the government had eliminated 177 bottlenecks between the year 2022 and 2025. So that seems like great news, and that was an effort led by the Minister of Economy and Industry. But when you go out to the street and talk to the people, to the people that are involved in business during our interview process, many people still complain about the bureaucratic burden. And part of the reasons are that some that were in the final slide of Sari, the public officials have not really incorporated into the flow of the processes, the changes of the regulations, and the citizens and the business leaders have not are not really asking for the changes of the reforms. So we need a better adoption by the public officials and more informed business owners. One of the things that the index has been really successful is in increasing the public awareness about the need of the reforms having to do with reducing bureaucracy. It is now recognized as a national priority. And as I mentioned, there are important results during this administration. We have upcoming presidential elections in February next year, and we have been meeting with presidential candidates and also for candidates that will be running for Congress. And they are also interested in supporting many reform projects that have to do with reducing the processes for opening and running businesses. With respect to the general results for Costa Rica, we're on the relatively good side of the spectrum. Yeah, I would not go into too much detail in the number of hours that are required for starting or running a business. But I would be happy to go into more details about the reforms that we're pushing for. We have been very successful, especially in laws related to promote the path from informal work to formal work for independent workers and for independent businesses. And we will be opening a virtual space for business owners and citizens for listening to what are the obstacles that they want us to help them with to get them out of the way and basically unleash their potential. Thank you, Sari.
Gracias. Thank you, Luis. And now I have a little surprise for you all. Here with us is Vicky Dalvila, a well-known journalist from Colombia that recently decided to jump into politics and is a presidential pre-candidate. So she wants to address us a few words for us.
Vicky, vente para acá. Es un placer darle la bienvenida. Hace poco vimos del expresidente de México, así que quizás aquí estamos hablando con la futura presidenta de Colombia. Vicky, un placer. Muchísimas gracias. Como sabes, estamos lanzando la nueva edición del Índice de Bureaucracia que mide el cargo burocrático que los gobiernos le imponen en este caso, a las medianas empresas. También vemos a las pequeñas empresas. Y me gustaría que nos comentaras, si llegases a la presidencia, ¿qué harías para aliviar el cargo burocrático? A Colombia no le fue muy bien en este estudio. ¿Qué harías para mejorar el cargo burocrático que los empresarios colombianos tienen que padecer para poder establecer y mantener una empresa?
Carlos, muchísimas gracias. ¿Cómo me les va? ¿Cómo están? Mucho gusto y gracias por esta oportunidad, estos minutos, y espero que se cumpla el vaticinio de Carlos, que ganemos las elecciones en Colombia, porque estamos jodidos con ese gobierno que hoy tenemos, de extrema izquierda, que quiere hundir a nuestro país en el neosocialismo. No queremos ser Venezuela, no queremos ser Cuba, no queremos ser Nicaragua. Queremos ser un país de libertades y de democracia como siempre, siempre lo hemos sido. Ahora bien, hablemos de qué haríamos en Colombia. Cuando ustedes miran el ranking, evidentemente estamos perdidos, nos va muy mal. Ocupamos en uno de los indicadores el segundo lugar y en el otro estamos también muy mal. Así que lo que tendríamos que hacer es definitivamente declarar la guerra a los trámites y a la regularización. Y nosotros tenemos un lío adicional internamente. No solamente hay que hacer toda clase de procesos. Estaba viendo la lista, les voy a contar, estaba viendo la lista de los trámites y es tenaz. Miren ustedes, consulta de nombre comercial, definición del tipo de empresa, registro mercantil, matrícula, obtención del registro único, certificado de existencia, representación legal, inscripción de los libros, cuenta bancaria empresarial, resolución de factura. Y así, esto es una cantidad de trámites que son una barbaridad. Y allá tenemos 5 millones de micronegocios. Y la vida de las empresas casi que está condenada a morir, a fallecer. 2 años de vida y probablemente la empresa se quebró, se murió. Entonces el nuevo gobierno sí tiene que llegar y esperamos, si Dios quiere, que seamos nosotros los que ganemos las elecciones, si los ciudadanos también lo deciden, y podamos entrar a declararle la guerra a esa tramitomanía que tenemos en el país y a esa regularización. Entre otras cosas, este gobierno ha hecho ha puesto decretos y demás que lo que han hecho es cercar a sectores completos de empresa, por ejemplo, a la minería, con decretos sobre uso del suelo, sobre prohibición de nuevas licencias, sobre tenencia de la tierra. Entre los trámites que les leía está, por ejemplo, el uso del suelo. Por eso hay tanta informalidad en nuestro país. Nosotros tenemos allá más de 13 millones de informales. La situación es muy delicada y creo que tenemos buenos ejemplos como en la región, como en Argentina. En Argentina se fueron por la desregularización y cuando uno va a cualquier auditorio de empresarios, lo que claman es, si nosotros llevamos haciendo muchos años las cosas bien, no nos regulen más, no nos pongan más trabas. Nosotros sí queremos declararle esa guerra a la regularización que permita que vengan muchos inversionistas a nuestro país. Hoy invertir en Colombia es casi que una pesadilla. Lo piensan mucho, lástima, tenemos todos los recursos naturales, tenemos el agua, tenemos talento humano, tenemos toda clase de climas, tenemos 2 océanos, es una berraquera. Ojalá ustedes vayan a conocer Colombia. ¿Alguien conoce Colombia acá? A todos. ¿Y no les parece una berraquera? Bueno, pues va a ser una berraquera más berraquera después del 7 de agosto del 26, cuando ganando las elecciones nos podamos posesionar. Y vamos a recuperar esa confianza inversionista que hemos perdido, porque el presidente que tenemos hoy es capaz de, por decreto, prohibir la venta de carbón a Israel, por ejemplo. Nosotros vamos a llegar a derogar ese decreto. O es capaz, por decreto, de prohibir que se den más licencias mineras cuando estamos llenos de cobre, de oro, de una cantidad de recursos, el carbón, por supuesto. Está acabando con la industria del petróleo. Nosotros vamos a llegar a generar un boom de exploración y explotación de petróleo en nuestro país. Vamos a hacer fracking nosotros en pleno siglo XXI. No hemos hecho fracking. Nosotros lo vamos a hacer. Vamos a buscar gas. Queremos volver a ser autosuficientes. Ustedes no me lo van a creer. Pero hoy en nuestro país hay gente que volvió a cocinar con leña. En nuestro país. Nosotros vamos a tener que llegar a catapultar todo este sector y además el sector de la energía, que está en una situación crítica en nuestro país, donde, vuelvo y les digo, en pleno siglo XXI estamos con el cuento del apagón, que podemos tener un apagón. Hay muchas cosas por hacer en nuestro país, mucho buen ejemplo que dar desde la presidencia de la República. Yo ni me presenté, yo soy periodista y me presento aquí, les cuento, 33 años luchando contra los corruptos, denunciándolos a todos, de todos los gobiernos habidos y por haber. Me ha tocado enfrentarme a gobiernos y a presidentes tan peligrosos como este que tenemos hoy. Tenemos amenazas gravísimas. Acaban de asesinarnos un candidato presidencial en nuestro país, a Miguel Uribe. Ayer se cumplía un mes de su muerte, pero hace 3 que le dispararon. Y solo 5 días después de que le dispararon a Miguel, el director de la policía estaba tocando la puerta de mi casa diciéndome la van a matar. Y aquí estamos, haciendo lo que toca, tomando las precauciones, sí, pero estamos dispuestos a hacerlo todo lo honorablemente posible para poder recuperar a Colombia. No podemos permitir que perdamos el país, la democracia, la libertad, el orden, la institucionalidad, todo eso es lo que está en juego. Y cuando ustedes lleguen a Colombia, les recomiendo miren el perfil de X del presidente y se van a dar cuenta cómo estamos. Estamos muy mal, porque estamos sometidos de una u otra manera al gobierno del M-19. Él perteneció al grupo terrorista M-19. Y hoy nos enfrentamos a que pueda llegar el gobierno de las FARC. No lo queremos. Tenemos además el ejemplo de Venezuela. Queremos que se acabe la narcodictadura en Venezuela y sería una gran oportunidad, sin duda alguna, para nuestro país porque nos podríamos convertir en la gran despensa de la recuperación de Venezuela y podríamos trabajar por fin la lucha contra el crimen con un gobierno normal en Venezuela. Queremos, y esto por favor se los digo en reserva, que Trump haga lo suyo, que tumbe al dictador de alguna manera, por presión, porque lo entregaron, por lo que sea, por la recompensa, pero necesitamos de manera urgente que se caiga la narcodictadura. Y ojalá se haya caído antes del 7 de agosto del 26 y que nosotros no hayamos perdido la democracia. En este momento es importante que la comunidad internacional, por eso estoy acá, escuchando a muchos empresarios colombianos, ciudadanos colombianos, y qué bueno, y gracias Carlos por esta oportunidad, estos minutitos, que además me da pena que me alargué, pero necesitamos que la comunidad internacional vigile para que podamos tener unas elecciones libres y democráticas en nuestro país, para que podamos llegar a combatir el crimen, a recuperar a nuestras Fuerzas Armadas. Hoy los criminales están en el 70% de los municipios de nuestro país y hay territorios tomados por los carteles mexicanos con los criminales. Eso nos está pasando en Colombia. Tenemos secuestrado a Jamundí, a Chocó, al Cauca, al Catatumbo, centenares, miles de ciudadanos colombianos hoy están allá y por eso es que tiene que haber una transformación real en nuestro país. No me alargo, les agradezco inmensamente y les quiero dejar sembrado en el corazón solo una cosa, y es que Colombia es un gran país. Colombia lo tiene todo para ser líder en la región. Y nosotros, yo que soy una periodista, que no vengo de los partidos, que no vengo del sistema, que no tengo maña, ni mancha, ni tacha, yo creo que vamos a ganar las elecciones, si Dios quiere, y vamos a hacer de Colombia un país diferente. Dios les pague. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Vicky, mucho éxito y me permito entregarte el resumen del índice de burocracia, espero que lo puedas utilizar.
Estaba viéndolo y vi que a Colombia le va muy mal, pero esto va a cambiar. Muchas gracias.
Muy bien, gracias por visitarnos. And now, getting back to our presentations, let me give the floor to Sigfrido Lee from Guatemala, Centro de Investigaciones Económicas Nacionales, and that center gathered the information for Guatemala and El Salvador.
Thank you, Sari. Just let me start this so I won't last too long. Good morning, and a pleasure being here with you. First of all, thanks to Florida International University and the Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom for having us here, especially Carlos Diaz and Sari. Actually, we're very thankful, more than words could be used for this, because actually being part of this index, of the bureaucracy index, has helped us raise awareness about bureaucracy in Guatemala. About 15 years ago, we started doing very important reforms and following the World Bank Competitiveness Index. And actually, we were very successful in a lot of measures, especially in streamlining how to open a business in Guatemala. But a few years back, that index disappeared, and suddenly bureaucracy started winning its space again. And being a participant of the index actually helped us very much in raising awareness again about this. And the thing is, if you don't measure it, it doesn't exist. That was the problem. And second, this is also very interesting. Doing two countries at the same time has also helped us a lot in understanding what's happening and how to do it. If we compare Guatemala and El Salvador a few years back, and I will talk a little bit more about El Salvador, I think, right now. A few years back, when we started doing this 3 years ago, it wasn't that much time. El Salvador and Guatemala were not much different. Actually, they were very much the same. And we were receiving a lot of information. But actually, when we started, El Salvador did several reforms, very important reforms in what it was doing. And suddenly, during the second year, and something that probably we won't be able to see in the numbers right now, but during the second year, El Salvador had lower its times significantly. And we were curious about that because it was the same people doing doing the measurement, the same people doing everything, and suddenly the numbers fall in El Salvador. What happened there? And we went there and started to see a little bit closer what they were doing. And actually, a lot of reforms that are eventually consolidating by now actually were very interesting. And first, there was a new corporate figure that they started, completely digitalized. This was the SAS figure. It's a simplified joint stock company. Also, second, they started implementing several digital platforms. And very interesting about these platforms is that they are also one-stop windows. Actually, you can open a business in the same platform. You don't have to go from one office to another. Third, they implemented the electronic signature. Eventually, you can do almost all your bureaucratic process online, thanks to the electronic signature. And fourth, this was another important, is that your electronic invoicing. Actually, you can do all your taxes online. Guatemala has done a lot of these things previously. That was interesting. That was something that was very interesting to us because, well, we did that several years ago. And we started seeing that we had done a lot of things. And yet, El Salvador was doing it much quicker than us, opening a business and administering a business also. And this is the interesting part. When you compare these two countries, and we started to try to understand, well, we did a lot of these things a lot time before that than El Salvador, and probably some of them even better. That was part of the interesting things. But there was still a great difference, and trying to understand it. And that's probably what I want to talk a little bit more now. First of all, what did Guatemala fail? A first lesson is lack of consolidated leadership. El Salvador did these reforms and in 3 years advanced very quickly. What happened in Guatemala is that one government did a lot, for example, in one process, but the next one dropped the ball, and then a third government simply forget about it. We were not constant through time. So important advancements that we did a few years back simply were abandoned and we didn't conclude the reform. A lot of reforms were simply left behind. To give you an example, to open a business in Guatemala takes less than 72 hours. That's less than 3 days. That's quite an accomplishment. When we started the reform, it took at least 6 months to open a business. But now we're on 3 days. That's great news. But El Salvador is doing it in 3 minutes. So we forgot to continue on the reforms. That's the first thing. We stopped doing them. Second, digitalization without transformation. That's a few years back, and I mean a very few years back after the COVID pandemic, we issued a law for digitalization. Actually, a very nice law. I was part of that. But the thing is that everybody digitalized, but they didn't transform their processes. So what you did, everything that you did wrong, you digitalized. Now we do it even better, all those wrong things. So digitalizing without transformation is a no-go. You have to transform. Third, fragmented vision. And this is very important. When you see, and Sari mentioned it, usually when you see these graphs over here, you see, for example, registration in national entities, and probably that's the worst kind. And you see, for example, requests for basic services very low, and specific for productive activity a little bit in between. The thing is, for example, we did very important reforms in electronic invoicing, in opening a business, in services directly related with business, or that you think are directly related with business. But we forgot, for example, the other processes, your environmental licenses, for example. We simply forgot about them because people don't relate it with business, although they are very important for businesses. And for example, you can open a business, you can pay your taxes in 45 minutes in Guatemala, your monthly taxes, but to get your environmental license takes you hopefully 6 months, but actually we found examples of going up to 18 months. So that's doing this fragmentation between processes is terrible. Also, isolated reforms. We did some reforms in time, but we didn't do them all, just a few. So eventually, you're as bad as your worst process. You can have very important achievements in some processes, but if you don't reform every process, it's not worth it. And third and last, something that is very important is to have a shared vision. If you don't have a shared vision within government, probably some people will do some good things. You have to have a shared vision within all your offices to actually accomplish a real change. And I like very much hearing President Calderón at the beginning, because it has to come from the top. If the top is not convinced, believe me and trust me, the lower parts are not convinced. They have other interests. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sigfrido. And now for closing this part, I invite Iana Young from the Institute for International Relations of University of West Indies in Trinidad and Tobago. And I may use this moment to welcome Dr. Siratan, the acting director of the Institute. Here you are.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. So I'm going to be presenting on the findings for Trinidad and Tobago. So the sectors we focused on were primary sector, mining and quarrying, and then in the secondary sector, we focused on manufacturing of chemical-related products, as well as construction. And in the tertiary sector, we focused on the trade of chemical-related products. So we found that on average, it can take about 4 months to open a business in Trinidad and Tobago. Oh, sorry. The real challenge comes when approvals are needed. So for the mining and quarrying sector, they had the hardest experience. To compare, in Guyana, to open a business in mining and quarrying, you need 2 permits and 17 supporting documents. In Trinidad and Tobago, you need 9 to 10 permits, and much of our process remains paper based. So businesses have to download forms, print them, prepare supporting documents, submit them in person, and sometimes even resubmit documents if they are misplaced by the requesting entity. One company told us that they had to submit their mining license application 5 times before it was finally processed. And while approvals in this industry can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months or as much as a year. By contrast, trade and manufacturing have benefited from more digitalized systems, making their procedures faster with only 2 to 3 permits required. Construction, however, faces significant delays, with town and country approvals alone taking up to 90 days, and for mining and quarrying, those approvals can stretch up to 120 days. We also found that operating procedures show a similar pattern. Mining and quarrying is our most extreme case, with businesses having to renew permits every 5 years, repeating the entire cycle each time, which includes 9 permits, over 100 supporting documents, and interactions with 5 different agencies. When we compare this to Guyana, the difference is stark. In Guyana, mining and quarrying permits total about 431 hours or 18 days annually. And in Trinidad and Tobago, our permits total nearly 12 times higher and twice the number of renewals. This illustrates both the scale of our bureaucratic burden and how discouraging it can be for new and existing businesses. For context, in 2024, there were only 12 licensed quarries in Trinidad and Tobago, all mainly large or state-owned. However, some companies noted that they were still operating while waiting on license renewals. At the same time, illegal quarrying is widespread. In 2023, 57 companies were fined by the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries for illegal quarrying. And out of that 57, 44 of those companies were shut down. Overall, delays of months can discourage new investment, encourage non-compliance, and make it difficult for businesses to operate smoothly. While some sectors are adapting through digitalization, others, particularly mining and quarrying, remain heavily constrained by paper-based processes. So some of the key challenges we found were, first, the lengthy procedures. Across sectors, approvals can take months, sometimes up to a year, and these delays create uncertainty, they slow down investment, and in some cases encourages businesses to look for shortcuts just to start operating, creating spaces for corruption. Second, the high impact on medium-sized firms. These businesses often don't have the staff or resources to handle these complex and repeated paperwork. The repeated applications, multiple supporting documents, and dealing with several agencies can take a real toll. And from our interviews, we found that the managing directors themselves were the ones often doing the applications. Third, partial digitalization. So we have some agencies that have online portals, however, it's very inconsistent and not user-friendly. So businesses, even though it's digital, they will still face delays and misinterpretation of information. Even with the chatbots and live chats, they don't always solve the problem, and it results in a lot of repeated back and forth with agencies, which means delays continue even in a so-called digital environment. So one example with our environmental management authority, they have implemented digital tools to provide guidance, but this digitalization isn't enough. It needs to go together with stronger institutional capacity and more efficient processes. So what we like to recommend is strengthening institutional capacity and staff training. Digital systems won't work if there aren't enough trained people behind them. Agencies need well-resourced teams who can process applications efficiently, provide meaningful support when businesses run into problems, and use technology to actually speed things up. Also, improving transparency and accountability. Publishing timelines, costs, and requirements will allow businesses to plan and prepare. Added to that, introducing performance monitoring can not only improve transparency and accountability, but also accountability. For example, if an approval is supposed to take 30 days but consistently takes 90, the agency should be held accountable. There needs to be some sort of responsibility and proper justification for these unwarranted delays. So transparency will build trust and will reduce opportunities for corruption. So in summary, bureaucracy remains a major obstacle, particularly in mining and quarrying. Compared to our neighbors in the region, like Guyana, the burden is far higher, making reform urgent. Reducing bureaucracy is not only paperwork reform, but it is an economic strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Iana. And now, of course, if you have any question for any of us, we are open to answer you all. Well, there is no, oh, you have, please, Carlos.
Sorry. Hi, good morning. My name is Carlos Rack, small business person, analyst, writer, occasionally. Sorry, there's a common theme in all the presentations we've seen that indicates that the digitalization of the procedure increases decreases the bureaucracy that makes obstacles to operating and opening and operating businesses. That seems to be a common theme. Also, the importance of rule of law in order to make sure that corruption decreases. Both of those things seem very related. Now, there are a couple of, one in your report, it highlights the importance of the informal sector and how difficult it is for businesses in the informal sector to transform themselves and enter the formal sector. What is the best way, given the fact that in reality, the access to digitalized platforms within the informal sector is not as good as it was in the formal sector, to transform or to unleash the economic potential of all that entrepreneurial energy that exists within all our region? That's kind of contested.
Well, it's more than a question, a challenge, because actually, yes, rule of law is something, is the basis. Because if you don't have justice, if you don't have clear, transparent, with accountability rules, you have no common ground to move on. I mean, that's the basic. But of course, in the case of digitization that you said, it's really important and have worked very well. But sometimes it's not enough. Actually, we have seen some procedures that when digitized, and the time even, the procedure is even worse because it's not friendly. And if you don't have a good way of transforming everything in the platform, and the platform is not robust enough, so when everybody is going into that, it's not falling down, I mean, you have a tremendous problem. And I won't tell you what happened in those countries when we have even raised some claim that they say, no, I prefer in person, because you know, we don't have electricity sometimes. And you have an idea of which country I was talking about. But many other countries have different problems. So the digitization, it's very important. What we are saying is that bureaucracy definitely is a barrier. And we speak always about macroeconomic terms, growth, but we forget that the devil is in the details, and the solution is also there. And if you reduce procedures, you reduce bureaucracy, you open the doors for real growth. Because that's the way you really have growth, when you have companies that invest, that hire people, and that produce. That's the only way to, to create a better quality of life of people. So this is the underlying message, but this is an institutional message. We have to create positive institutions that create positive values. And of course, you have a lot of technologies, but you have clear the goal, that what is what you want to achieve.
Yeah, just a quick comment on that. It's not just the regulatory burden and regulations, it's the cost of operating in the formal sector, like the tax burden, like it's really high in Costa Rica. And so it's taxes, labor taxes are really high. So people in the informal sector have to see if it makes sense for them to move to the formal sector. And in many cases, it doesn't.
Thank you for the informality.
Right.
Yes. That's why I spoke about the institution. Institution create incentives, the way you create them.
May I add something else?
Yes, of course, Sigfrido.
Sorry, it was a very good question, actually. And a few things. When you talk about rule of law, particularly in bureaucracy, how do you translate it into something that benefits or doesn't benefit you? And usually it has to be about discretion. The problem is the discretion at the window level, even. That's where you lose that rule of law. People at the window level trying to decide what was or what is what they want. And digitalization or digital transformation actually helps you to take that out of the picture. That discretion helps you. But it will only be successful if you actually take out that discretion, not leave it there. And how you can construct a better institution, as Sari was mentioning. And eventually, digital transformation is more about transformation than about digital. And that's the point. If you don't transform your processes, streamline them, simplify them, even eliminate a lot of them, and you simply digitalize them, you didn't achieve anything. Actually, what you're doing is automatizing your devices of bureaucracy. So you have to have that in mind when you do this transformation. Thank you.
Well, I don't see any other questions, so I want to say thank you to all of you. Really, I want to insist that this kind of research are a team effort, and I want to thank those centers that are today here present in the room, but they were 21 countries, so there are 20 centers that have been working with us, so I have to thank them all, because they are the ones who go to the street, raise the information, and make this index possible. So thank you, and to thank all who are not around. And I already thank our director, but I also want to thank all the staff of the Adam Smith Center, because, you know, we speak about the research, but we never see everybody who is working behind, helping us to get to this point. So thank you, all of you who are around, and well, thank you very much, and I hope you keep coming to our event. Thank you.